Great to have everyone joining us today for this webinar, Lions, Tigers, Bears, and AI, a community conversation. My name is Wayne Herman. I'm the Vice President and Chief Academic Officer here at Los Angeles Pacific University, and it is our pleasure to host this webinar with a couple of our faculty and staff here at LAPU. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Joanna Vance to introduce herself, and then George Hanshaw will be joining us as a presenter a little bit later on in the presentation.
All right, thank you, Wayne. I'm Joanna Vance. I'm a faculty member in health sciences at LAPU, and I'm excited to have a conversation with everyone today about AI. And as the name implies, there's a little bit of everything in here. So thank you again for joining us. I'm going to get started with the first section of it, and then I'll be turning it over to my colleagues to further the conversation a little bit. And then we'll be looping back to me, and we'll open it up to everyone participating to share some thoughts as well. So I like this quote to start. I think it's very fitting for where we're headed with all this. So artificial intelligence, deep learning, machine learning, whatever you're doing, if you don't understand it, learn it, because otherwise you're going to be a dinosaur within 3 years. That caught my attention because I'm not so interested in becoming a dinosaur yet. And so hopefully you all feel the same way, and that this is an opportunity for us to learn together. So as a faculty member, something that really catches my eye is how much universities are going big on this whole concept of AI. I mean, this is hitting big at a lot of places. And so when I started to see that, I just did a little bit of research to see what some of the bigger institutions are doing, just for us to gauge how important this is going to be for all institutions. So USC is going to invest more than $1 billion this year in its AI initiative. So 90 new faculty members, a 7-story building at the new school. SUNY Albany, I apologize for the typo there, 27 new faculty members, all specializing in AI. Largest cluster hire in the institution's history ever. Purdue University set to recruit about 50 new faculty members in 2024, same reason. Emory University states that they're hiring between 60 and 75 new faculty members, an endowed chair. And why this really hit home for me is because aside from AI, everything I hear about higher education and teaching and faculty jobs is that they're dwindling and student counts are down and institutions are struggling for enrollment. And in the face of that, we have AI, where universities are going big. So I think that's important for us to think about. So for me, it makes me really want to embrace that challenge. Another thing we're facing as faculty and academic institutions, I'm going to show you a little chart on the next slide. So a team of researchers at NYU, Princeton, and Wharton School did an analysis of jobs that are going to be most exposed to generative AI, such as ChatGPT. And pretty much by exposed, they mean not existent, exposed in the going away type of use of that word there. So you'll see how many of these are in the teaching profession, and I read through their whole study in teaching profession at the higher ed level, so pertaining to us specifically. So here are the jobs that study found to be most exposed to generative AI, meaning most at risk for going away completely. Number 2, language literature teachers. 3, foreign language teachers. 4, history teachers. 5, law teachers. 6, philosophy and religion teachers. There's a tongue twister. 7, 8, 9, also teachers. So we in higher ed are, air quotes, very exposed by the findings of this particular study, which I think is important for us to think about how we're going to do things going forward. So our students are already with AI, whether we are or not. I got this information from a Best Colleges survey. So they surveyed, I should have put it on here, but I believe it was around 2,000 students. So students are already using ChatGPT, at least 43% of them. That's a lot for college students who, may or may not be into learning technology. 50% have already used AI tools to complete assignments or exams. 54% of students say their instructors have not openly discussed the use of AI tools like ChatGPT, probably a major issue since they are using it without direction. 60% say that their instructors or schools haven't specified how to use AI tools ethically or responsibly. Keep in mind, this is a March 2023 survey and things are changing quickly. So schools are now, as far as I can tell from my research, rather in panic mode, trying to figure out how to get ahead of this thing and address quickly this growing trend in student use. So we already know that we can't just say, not going to work, don't do that. 51% of students say that they're going to continue to use AI writing tools, even if their instructor or institution tells them not to. So here to stay, we've got to work with it instead of around it, is the reason for bringing up that point. So we want to prepare our students for what's coming next, for their future careers, probably a lot of careers which we don't even know exist at this point and don't even understand. So we need to get with the program in terms of enhancing critical thinking, figuring out how to help them access the materials they need, collaborate and communicate, and promote ethical use of AI. So just prepping our students for what's to come, again, in a world that we probably don't even understand very much. So that's a little intro, from me. We're going to loop back to me in a few, but I have a couple of colleagues who are going to jump in to further the conversation for a few minutes here, just to change things up for you in terms of the voice you're hearing. So George Hanshaw is going to start us off. He's our Director of Digital Learning and Solutions here at LAPU. He does a lot of thinking about AI in his role, a lot of working with AI, and he's very knowledgeable. So excited to hear what he's going to share with us for a few minutes.
Hey, Joanna, thank you for giving me a couple moments on your presentation here on the webinar. And yeah, I spent a lot of time thinking about AI, and really the thought process for me comes to it being a partner with us, because my favorite saying is culture eats content for lunch. And the reason why that is because AI helps us build a super strong instructor presence. And when we're talking about instructor presence, we're talking about the cognitive presence, social presence, and teaching presence. And that instructor presence is what builds a high performance culture within a classroom, within a university, within a school. So I kind of think of it in terms of how I can use AI to help build that deep instructor presence. So really that's kind of the perspective that I'm looking at it from. So if we go to the next one, we'll kind of show you some tools, AI tools that'll help you do that. And to create that extreme presence, if you will, that heavy instructor presence, I love Visme. Visme is a tool where you can go in and you can create documents, presentations, videos, GIFs, web graphics, whatever you want without being a designer at any stretch. So like somebody such as myself who has a limited abilities within the world of graphics, I go into a tool like Visme, utilize their AI components, because if you go backwards to the original slide, I actually built that slide with the picture and all the content on the slide was done. AI helped me build it, everything except for the comment in there. I typed in what I wanted, and I actually wanted it in anime because I was watching, oh man, what is it? One side is a new anime that was on Netflix, a live action anime. So I wanted an anime cartoon, typed all that in, described it, and it gave me a whole lot of selection. So I was able to use that. And things like that really resonates with our learners. That helps us increase our instructor presence while we are in the classroom. So we can go back to the one there, and then Loom AI. If you want to be really present within your classroom, Loom AI, we've all probably know about Loom, but they've come out with some AI within it. And the critical part for me is that we record a video, so you can do a screen capture with it, and you could go through whatever content you want, however you want to go through it. And then it automatically writes you a summary down below and puts chapters into it. So now not only can you just directly embed that into your LMS, guess what? Now students say, oh, this is where Dr. George was talking about, the psychology of assessment or whatever it may be. Boom, they go right there. They get that summary down below, which is really accurate. It is it is extremely accurate, the summary that they give you. Sometimes it kind of takes a turn here and there, so you want to go through and maybe just edit it. But that summary and the ability for it to automatically create chapters within the video that you simply embed gives you so much to extra time where you don't have to go into it and you look you look like you have this incredible cognitive presence or expertise of presence within there, not only on the subject but on the technology that you're using as well. Copy AI if you're stuck at writing or need a brainstorm buddy. Copy AI is amazing at that. You go in and just write in your prompts. You don't have to be a prompt engineer. They have this thing that says improve. You write what you think you want. If you don't get very good results, hit that improve button and it'll help you write a prompt that gets you exactly what you want. So that helps you brainstorm and kind of connect with how maybe your learners would like to receive this information, receive this content, which is very interesting to say the least. And then you could take that content, you could put it in Visme and create a document. So it looks very engaging and it has all the graphics and everything that goes with it. And then Grammarly AI. Does anybody not use Grammarly here? Does anybody not use something like that to help? They have Grammarly Go, which is very helpful for students. It won't write an essay for anyone, believe it or not. It'll stop. It'll say, "Hey, I'm not here to write your essay, but I can walk you through things like a brainstorm session, help with the outline, stuff like that." So Grammarly AI and Grammarly Go have two real specific things that I love to use. And one of them is I'll write something up and then I'll say find gaps. And it'll go through and it will look at what I wrote and say, hey, you have a gap here. What does this mean? And how can you get us to this point? And it gives you really detailed questions and instructions on how to fill that gap, and even some opportunities to utilize it to help you fill that gap. So I find it very useful. So those are 4 tools that I wanted to share with you that you can use to really create a heavy instructor presence, both in your teaching presence, cognitive presence, and social presence within the online classroom. Thanks, Joanna.
Yeah, thank you, George. I appreciate that. So if you have questions about what George shared there, if you want to just jot them down, we can definitely loop back to that when we get to the larger group discussion. So thank you, George. Really interesting and helpful for all of us. Oops. Let's see if I can advance my slides here. Okay, so next up, we're going to hear from Dr. Craig Brewer. He's an assistant dean here at LAPU, and he's going to be sharing a little bit with us this morning as well. So Craig, thank you very much. When you're ready to take the floor, let me know. Hi, Craig.
Hello and welcome. Can you hear me?
I sure can. Thank you. And Craig has a few slides to share with us as well, so I'll get him to his first one.
So it's a blessing to be with you all today. Thank you so much for being here. I just want to share a little bit. One of the things that we've been challenging ourselves to do as faculty, as Joanna had shared about, is to start using AI ourselves. So we talk about having a growth mindset. And for many of our faculty, the feedback that we're hearing about AI is that, well, we don't want students to be using ChatGPT because it could lead to unethical behavior. And so we don't want to encourage that. And so I had an opportunity to connect with our faculty just last week and have more conversation just around AI and encouraging them to think about how they might use it. And so please, we'll progress the slides and I'll just talk you through a little bit of these things. So as a faculty member, one of the things I thought about is, my role continues to get larger and there's more things that we're doing. And so how can I be more efficient in my job? And that's where I started from. And so I got onto ChatGPT and I said, email from a Christian professor to a student. And as you can see here, what this could potentially do is it could help me to be much more efficient with my time rather than drafting something myself. This particular case, I talked about student who lost their father. And as you can see, within 2 seconds, I have 4 paragraphs to work from. And so then the next question is, if I do use this, how do I give credit where credit is due? So that was another part of our conversation is, as faculty, there are resources out there, and we're encouraging faculty to begin using ChatGPT and other resources like this. And the piece, though, that I think is really important for us as faculty is modeling to students how we're using ChatGPT. And so this is just an example. I was really impressed with how this looked like I could have written it. And so after I looked at it, I'm like, wow. We'll progress to the next slide, Joanna. So I've got another one here as well. This is email from a Christian professor I put about a student submitting late work. And in this particular case, you can see here that ChatGPT quickly gave me something to work with. And what I liked about this is it reminded me of one thing as well. As you can see from this, just I trust this message finds you well. I want to take a minute or a moment to reiterate our course policies. And so what you can see there is that it provides a framework. And from that framework, I could potentially look at that and say, okay, are there things in my letter? So I'll give you another example. Maybe I write the letter and I think, did I address all these issues I should have about the deadlines? Then I can use ChatGPT just to see, are there any things that I may have missed? And so again, this is me as a faculty member trying to experiment with the technology just to see how it might help me in terms of efficiencies. And so we'll continue to move on. This is what I came up with for our faculty development that we held last Saturday. And during the meeting, I just shared with faculty that I put here, email from Christian professor to faculty members who attended a faculty development. And again, you can see that it even included, as Christian educators, we are called to be lifelong learners seeking to expand our knowledge and skills. I mean, it was, and so in any event, all of this is just to say, as Joanna so clearly articulated, as faculty, we're going to need to become familiar with these technologies in order to support our students and to encourage them in their learning. And if we become dinosaurs, then we're no longer relevant. So Joanna's motivation is part of my motivation too. I've got to remain current in this. And the other piece I want to just highlight is giving credit where credit is due is our really focus at LAPU. We want to encourage students to use technology, but we want them to give credit where credit was due. So if I were to do something like this, I'd want to find some way to give credit to ChatGPT and reference that as a resource. I haven't sent any of these communications out to anyone thus far. I'm just in the early phases of experimenting with how I can use some of these AI resources just to help me to be more efficient and effective in my role.
All right. Thank you, Craig. I really appreciate that. And it's funny, it was so Jen Livingston, my direct boss, it was my birthday this past week, and she used ChatGPT to send me a very nice birthday message. I loved it because it was extremely detailed and, just the kind of thing that if you wanted to take 45 minutes to write somebody a birthday message but none of us want to actually do that. So it was very funny, and I mean, she told me she was using ChatGPT and we had a laugh about it, but yeah, I mean, I'm with you, Craig. It's interesting. I haven't sent any communications like this either, but I've definitely do think about the same things you think about, why would I spend 45 minutes to write something ChatGPT can write in 2 seconds, but yet I still do it. And where are we at with that? So I think that's a very interesting ethical conversation. And I appreciate you bringing that up very much, something that we'll have a lot to discuss as a group. So I'm going to share just a little bit more here. Let me minimize. There we go. Okay. So I mean, all this brings to light, especially with what Craig shared and what we can do. Will AI help teachers or replace them? I think that's a big question on the table these days. So teaching jobs probably not going to disappear, but they're definitely going to be transformed in the age of AI. It is not going to be business as usual for any of us. So one major question on my mind is, how can we find ways to make teachers more efficient at teaching, students more efficient at learning? I think AI, some of the tools that George shared, can definitely support both of those types of progress for us. So another thing that's on my mind as we think about AI is, how are we going to prepare students for a labor market in which we don't even know what jobs are going to exist from 5 years from today? Things are changing so quickly. As higher ed overall, we've been in the business of preparing students for particular careers. So that's going to get very challenging when we can no longer train students for particular jobs because we don't know what those jobs are going to be in 5 years. So instead of thinking about training them in job specific ways, maybe we need to change our thinking a little bit and train them to think critically, train them to use tools, train them to learn how to learn new tools, and to do that responsibly and ethically. One thing that I know for certain is that we need to be training students for technology literacy, AI literacy in all fields. And this, frankly, creates a little bit of stress for me, because there's no way I can train my students well if I'm not at the cusp of what's going on. And that's difficult. That's been difficult for me, and I know some of my peers, to figure out how do we stay on top of things? How do we train ourselves in the most efficient way so that we're making sure that we are a step ahead of our students? Very challenging these days for educators. So robots are probably going to replace teachers by 2027. That's a bold claim that Anthony Sheldon, British education expert, made at the British Science Festival in 2023. A lot of people do not agree with that statement. Some people do agree with that statement. So he is probably, I hope, a little aggressive and out there to make such a clear deadline for replacing teachers, but he's definitely not the first person to suggest that technology is going to replace human workers. That's a hard thing to deny at this point. So technology is definitely going to disrupt jobs, including ours. Lots of people are going to be unemployed / dinosaurs if they don't kind of get in step with the way the world is changing. So I know all of us here on this webinar really like our jobs and hope to retain them. So something I want us to think about is, in academia, there's no denying this is a world known for being pretty archaic, pretty slow to change, lots of times way out of step with the modern world and the way it's changing. So with that in mind, I want to have a little bit of discussion about how we embrace these new AI challenges. How do we prevent ourselves from becoming dinosaurs? How do we make academia still relevant in today's world, where I am seeing more and more and more jobs that a college degree just isn't required to get the job anymore. A skill set is required. And a lot of big companies and businesses who have formerly had requirements, oh, you must have a bachelor's degree, you must have this. They want skills, they want thinkers, they want critical thinkers. And if that's you, they'll pick you up and they'll do all the tedious paperwork of getting you a bachelor's degree while you're employed there. So our world is changing so quickly. My question for us now is, how do we stay relevant given that? How do we not lose our jobs that we love in this age of such quick and radical change? So I want to open the conversation up for a few minutes to just get some thoughts, some new ideas here. You heard from me quite a bit, and George and Craig a little bit. So I'd like to get some feedback. What did we say that really resonated with you? What did we say that you'd like to push back on and call crazy? Audience participation, feel free to unmute and jump in for a few. Let's get a little bit of conversation going here. We'll do that for about 10 minutes, 10 to 12 minutes. Then I'm going to jump back in, and then at the end, I'm going to pass it to Wayne to wrap up. So that's our agenda from here. But Audience, go ahead. What do you think? What did we say that would be?
If people want to comment, if they just raise their hand, then I can help them get unmuted. They can't unmute themselves directly, but I can do that. So if they raise their hand, I'll unmute them and we'll go from there.
Thank you, Wayne.
I see one hand raised. Let me find it. There we go. Oops, couple. Yvonne, you should be able to speak now.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. So I wasn't able to see myself, but anyway, I just wanted to say that I think AI is here to stay, and one has to be totally. Because I got totally into ChatGPT, and it's a lot of fun, and I think that in the future, the students are. I've already seen students using ChatGPT. They're not citing it. I could just tell that forum responses, and I'm like, no, that's ChatGPT. And then someone wrote a whole essay because it said first, second, third, overall. Usually students don't use so many transition words because they don't know what a transition word is. And so I knew right away, yeah, ChatGPT. So I've had several students where I had to, and I used your AI in the classroom, that little sheet, the 4, in order to tell the students, you have to cite your sources. That sort of thing. So you got to attribute the ChatGPT. If you use ChatGPT, you need to. So I think that the students are already using ChatGPT. They're not attributing it. They just think that they could just get it under the wire because ChatGPT has such stilted language. So it's really, right, at least for now, easy to see. Although the future ChatGPT, did you know that ChatGPT can now see, hear, and listen? The newest one, it got upgraded. And you can now make pictures with it. You can talk to it and have a conversation with ChatGPT.
Very interesting, Yvonne. Thank you for sharing that. I looked a little bit into the newer version, but to be honest, I don't know exactly what it can do. But from the sounds of things, it's going to just be another step in the evolution for all of us to.
And it's so fast.
Adjust to. Yes, exactly.
So fast.
Thank you for that comment.
Gary has a comment for us as well.
Yeah, I was actually thinking a little bit about this because a while ago, and it kind of brought up something that came to mind. It was kind of a joke, but serious at the same time. And I was watching a skit from John Oliver where he talked about how automation is changing everything. Of course, he's human. Of course, he's humorous. He's a comedian, but he brings a lot of attention to these things. He talked about a long time ago where people thought when the ATM machine came out, a lot of the tellers at the bank thought they were going to lose their jobs too, but it didn't. Instead, their jobs changed. Now they were now free to do other different things and that outside of handing out the money. So in this particular case, I kind of brought the parallel back, into AI and ChatGPT and everything of the sort, where my department, I'm an instructional designer at Cal Baptist University, and we had a meeting about this. So what we did is we actually, as a group, we all downloaded and created ChatGPT accounts for ourselves and displayed them for a little bit. And as a designer, I wanted to test how efficient or what was the efficacy of ChatGPT actually creating an actual course design outline, things like that. And at least in my experience, well, I could be wrong in terms, maybe I'm not getting good enough yet to give me good prompts yet, but I tried to say, let's create some instructional objectives using Bloom's taxonomy. A lot of them, unfortunately, though, were very robotic. They did not feel quite like they could actually work. Many of them didn't just use words like know, understand, which does not work when I went with Bloom's levels. So, but when telling it to do other things like tell me a story, here's that, it got mixed responses. There are definitely aspects we know for the fact that ChatGPT definitely is going to be able to shine at, and that's the reason why students are using them. But at the same time, from what I've been able to tell, ChatGPT in many cases just more or less just mimics what is already out there. It doesn't really have good executive function yet. And then metacognitive or awareness, things like that, things that me as a designer I need to know to plan out a course. ChatGPT at this point doesn't seem to me it has that robust capabilities for that yet. So when you think about on the landscape of what things might go on for, I think we have to understand and differentiate what exactly are the higher levels that we as humans are we better capable of than ChatGPT or any AI is. Whatever then after that below, how ChatGPT can then be used or any other AI, how that can be used like to leverage what comes after. We as people have to plan out what's going to be the overall executive functions, the overall planning. ChatGPT then just comes out and they come after that. So then we kind of have to keep that differentiation, into play. What exactly are we better at as humans to plan out? What exactly can ChatGPT just do out as a tool? So I think as of right now, we still I think there's still a lot of discussion based on where exactly how robust AI can actually work. But from what I've been able to tell, as long as we can differentiate what's more executive, much more metacognitive in our particular field, that's going to be we're going to help determine where we can actually keep using, the AI tools for our own benefit.
Yeah, thank you, Gary. Yeah, it's great to have you joining us too to get that outside perspective. So thank you for coming and thank you very much for sharing that.
I also have Terry Raleigh who would like to add a comment.
Hi, and thanks everybody. I participated in the in-service on Saturday, and I will admit I was a little lax in getting up to speed on the new AI. But I got up really fast because I started grading, and my first paper that I pulled up had a similarity rating and turned it in that got my attention. And then when I got there for AI, it said 94%, and I went, uh-oh. And it gave me an opportunity. First of all, I set up an account so that I could be familiar with what I was talking about. And then I reached out to the student because I'm teaching that ISTU 101 course. So these are brand new students to the university. And in this particular case, the student was beside herself because she said, I want to do this right. I don't want to be in trouble. Here's what I do. And we talked about it. I talked about not using it to replace your own writing, but instead using it to generate ideas. Then she called me the next day and fessed up and said she'd also used it in her discussion post, and I hadn't caught that yet. So whether we like it or not, it's there. Then when I started using it, I found it helpful because I'm creating some content for students that talks about academic writing, and making sure that I cover all the points was really important. So that was helpful to me. But what I will say is I think the first thing we need to do is to update the ISTU 101 course, because we talk about plagiarism for about 2 minutes. We have a discussion about it in week 6, but there's no discussion about AI at all. So I'd really like to do that so that we can say to all the other instructors, no, they've been introduced to it. So we can't claim ignorance there. So that would be my 5 seconds worth of content.
Do you think that's such a great idea, Terry, to put that into an intro course? I'm really glad you mentioned that. Maybe that's something that's been discussed already, but I haven't heard that discussion. So I think that's such a great point, and probably something Wayne just picked up on too. So thank you very much for sharing that.
You're
Terry.
welcome. That should be rolling out fall too.
Perfect.
Awesome.
Believe it
George,
or not. Yeah.
do you want to say a bit more about that, George?
Well, it's so important because, like as Terry brought up, it's so important that we teach people how to use AI ethically and professionally, because they're going to use it on the job. If they're not using it on the job, they're probably not having a job because AI is embedded in so many different things. So within the ISTU 101 course, Lisa Phillips is the assistant dean for that. She ensured that we had many voices within that course build, and several of the voices brought in the need to look at AI and how to use it ethically within courses and things like that. So fall 2, and hopefully we'll get some content out prior to that, because it is all about how to use it ethically.
Yeah, thank you, George. Good follow-up. Yep, and I'm excited to hear that that's something that's happening.
Vance also wanted to add a comment.
I'm sorry, Wayne, were you talking to me?
Yeah, Vance.
I'm sorry. That first, my name didn't come up. Thanks so much for what you're doing. You guys are doing today. I have a feeling that if all of the squares were showing with all of our faces, you'd see lots of nodding going on, and maybe a little bit of crying and gnashing of teeth. But I think that my day job, and Craig knows this, full-time day job is in education. It's preschool through 8th grade, do a lot of K-8 stuff. And so I've just been doing the crash course, in addition to the in-service Saturday, just trying to get a real sweeping view of AI when it comes to education, completely. And there's some things that that are being said this morning that are so good, and I just think that we have to just keep reiterating it, because it's not something, oh yeah, it's like an in-service, we hear it now, I make some notes, and then I'm going to go back to whatever else I'm doing. And that clearly is not going to work. This whole idea of reimagining how we learn, and that's for everybody. And it has to start with us. I mean, if we're going to model it right, then we have to be the ones to grasp onto it. And so some of these ideas, like education must respond quickly to AI, and we usually don't respond quickly to much of anything, is as an as an industry, is really important. But some of these things, like prohibiting the use of AI, will not work. I think that's a big deal. And the idea of it's so easy to get focused on the negative aspects and on the integrity part. And not that those aren't important, but I think the idea, again, and I've heard this from some of you too, of flipping the conversation, flipping the mindset around so that it becomes a more positive conversation. Let's talk about the positive aspects. How do we have a positive atmosphere of engaging in the 4 C's, all of those kinds of things. And then, how, and I guess we're asking this question for all of us. How does each of our roles have to change so that we can work most effectively to do the thing that we do? And so these tools, and George, you were saying, I really appreciate this, these AI tools that we need to use to create an instructor presence, right? Because if we have a great instructor presence, isn't that like one of the best ways we can prevent losing our jobs and losing effectiveness, is to actually do that, create that. So no matter what age we are, or how long we've been teaching in education, and this is 41 years for me, but the reality is this is one of those pivotal moments. And so that we have to show how nimble we can be as individuals, as educators, as an organization at LAPU, to really grasp onto it. And yeah, I know there are academic integrity issues are really important, and we have to deal with those appropriately. But I think that's just one part of that conversation. And so thank you so much for having this conversation, because we're going to need to have a lot of mutual encouragement and a lot of positive examples, I think, as we go. And we're going to have to do this on a recurring basis.
Yeah, I agree with you, Vance. And I bet this comment is going to resonate with other people who are faculty. Here's something I need addressed by somebody. I don't even know who, the institution in general, but my job is becoming very overwhelming in this regard. And I don't know what to do about it, because my students are using AI like mad. I go into my discussions, and just like Yvonne said, I know the language of ChatGPT. So I go in there and I see all of my, not all of, that's such an exaggeration. I see several of my students putting their discussion post in there that clearly came right from ChatGPT, times a discussion every week, times 3 classes. I don't know what to do. I cannot address in detail this situation with every student who this is happening with at this point, unless you were to give me the equivalent of a 3-hour buy for a class every term, and then I will, and then I would. But otherwise, I would be spending, I'm not kidding, I would spend 20 hours a week dealing with this at this point. And I just can't, because my other students need to learn, my other students need my attention, my other students have things going on. The 20 students that have used ChatGPT this week, it's not going to be a simple thing, because as I can scroll back in the discussions, as Jay is pointing out in the chat, it's a very serious thing to accuse a student of copying content. And so I don't want to just level accusation at a student. I want to have a real conversation with them about, let's talk through what you're doing. This is probably a really good skill to have, that you know how to use this. I'm very excited to see that. AI is great. Let's talk about how you use it well, responsibly, ethically. I want to have that conversation. I don't want to send a, you're in trouble and now there's a point. That's not the message I want to send about AI. I can't do that 20 times a week at this point. So I probably shouldn't admit this, but sometimes I'm like 99% sure they're using ChatGPT, but I've already had 2 conversations about it that day, and I've got grading to do and lots of other students who, and I'm like, oops, okay. And that cannot be the way we roll. And so I need that situation addressed. It's becoming a huge problem, and I don't have a solution for it. And I bet that resonates with every faculty member sitting here.
We also have a comment from Elise.
Hi, this is Elise. Thanks for hosting these. I was there on Saturday. I have been here. I'm just trying to learn it all so I don't fall over the abyss of despair. And as I'm listening to you all, I really think about why, like the personal part, like we don't want to get overwhelmed with the robots, and our students, if they're using computers, like why are they here at LAPU? Like I've really tried to actually call all of my students to welcome them to my classes now, just so I can insert this, hello, there is a person grading your papers and evaluating you. How do we make sure that they're, well, if you're going to use a robot, can I use a robot to evaluate you? Like, how do you feel about that quality of evaluation? And is that what you're buying? What are you buying from the university? You know, what is your education mean? Those things like Joanna said about time. And coming from the School of Education, we think about how long it takes students to learn things, and everyone learns at different amounts of time. And are we going to lose students who don't learn fast enough? Like, what? These are all questions that I'm thinking of, and I appreciate all the honesty. And Joanna, especially your last comment was very honest about how do we keep on top of all of this and keep students at our university, because they were so happy when I made those phone calls and said, oh my gosh, a professor's never called me. And I was like, well, you know, that's what makes us different at Los Angeles Pacific University. We're really concerned about our students. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you for the time.
Yeah, good. I appreciate that. And I think you're right. That human touch is so important. Let's see if maybe we can take one last attendee comment, if anyone has one.
See, Gary's hand is still up, but I'm not sure if he's wanting to make an additional comment or if that's just up from the last time.
Oh yeah, I actually didn't put it down, and then that was my fault. But I did have one thing I was thinking about though, to kind of off on top of that. And then talking about how we're trying to make sure everyone isn't using, you know, ChatGPT to plagiarize. I mean, there are AI checkers that supposedly work on that, and then they try to check and see whether it was actually put in through an AI. Now we talked about that also in my department, but the thing is though, when some people have used them, from what I understand, they're still kind of imperfect. And then when I understand, sometimes some people have pretty good language, and sometimes then they put them through the AI checker. They think, oh yeah, it was done by AI. No, I completely did this originally. So I think I want to keep that in mind as well too, because some people think that if you just put the AI checker, if anyone's going to use them, then that's the end all be all. It's not. So we have to be extra careful if we're going to try using some of those to make sure students aren't actually plagiarizing, just using the AI to do their work for them. Because sometimes occasionally, then these AI checkers, they're not fully robust. You have to fully pick up on the differences. Since AI tries to mimic it tries to mimic human speech, in a more, if you will, proper way, if you will. Some people think if you put it through, some people think they look at it. Some people can absolutely tell, yeah, this is AI. But some people, the AI checker isn't going to always be the best, determinant for that. So you always have to definitely keep that with a grain of salt as well.
Yeah, I agree, Gary. And Craig has been a leader for us in thinking through how faculty address those kind of issues with students, because we really value our students. We want them here. Students are fragile. We don't want to be leveling a lot of accusations at fragile students who, we have to really think about how they're going to take that information in, which ties back incredibly well to the very real problem I'm having right now, where I'm not necessarily addressing everything from a time standpoint, because I can recognize ChatGPT super well. I know its language, just like Yvonne. And so I know that students are using it, and I'm not addressing it with them because it's not feasible. And one of my colleagues who's not here today, a full-time faculty member we have, Brant Hines, said the same thing in a meeting we had a couple of weeks ago. He said, don't quote me on this, I'm not going to articulate it perfectly, but he basically said, I'm still going to teach and do my job. I'm not going to change the whole nature of my entire job where I become some sort of like, 30% of my job is addressing AI plagiarism checker. I'm not going to do that. I have things to teach students. So, at a certain point, either we need something or it's up to the student. So just faculty aren't going to do that. That's not, can you imagine if that's what our jobs became? And if I addressed every instance of AI, that's exactly what my job would be. And I'm not willing to go there yet. So I'm not doing that. It's a problem. So I think that's why we're here having this conversation, all of us trying to put our heads together. We know things are changing. We don't know how they're going to change, and we want to do the best job we possibly can to address that. So I always very much appreciate when we bring in voices from the audience too, because I can get into my own mindset about, oh yeah, clearly we should do this and it should go like that. And then hearing all these different experiences really helps me to think differently. So I really want to thank all of you who shared some ideas and experiences today. That's been really helpful. I appreciated hearing from George and Craig, all the audience members. At this point, I want to turn the floor over to Wayne to give him a few minutes to share a little bit about where we're at with AI as an institution, or kind of free form, Wayne, whatever you're thinking at this point. I want to give the last little bit of time we have to you.
I'll take the last few minutes, but we do have two more people who wanted to comment. And so let's hear first from Steve Gardner and then from Tracy Campbell. So go ahead, Steve.
Okay. I think every new technology has been greeted with fear. I'm sure the hunter-gatherers feared the farmers and their ability to produce food very quickly, and the farmers feared the industrialists, and more recently you've got manufacturing that's feared the robots, and the bank tellers who feared the ATM. And here we have ChatGPT and a lot of other technologies we haven't mentioned, and it's being greeted with fear. And what we have found throughout the history is that the fear is basically exaggerated. It does reduce the human contribution, and it does have its negative effects, but not nearly as bad as what we feared. And people learn to use it properly, and it greatly enhances the human experience as well as productivity and the job experience and so on. So yeah, we have some learning to do, but it's not something that we should get a tight stomach over.
Great, thanks for that comment. Tracy? Sorry, I need to, there you go. Now you can unmute yourself.
Thank you. So the concern that we ran into at my university when we started the year with a new anti-plagiarism tool that included an AI checker is that it highlights the text that it believes is written by machine, and it gives a percentage, but it doesn't provide any evidence or report that we can share with the student. And I'm just not really comfortable accusing a student of using a tool like that when I have nothing to back it up with. And so it ends up becoming a he said, she said, or conversation with the student. And I used it in my research course and had two students that had fairly high percentages on the AI checker report. And I thought, well, maybe they're just really good writers. I looked back at their other work and they really were. And so it's difficult for me to differentiate between whether it was machine written or not. What I'm thinking of doing now is designing some additional assignments in that course, having them do an outline prior to submitting different components of their research proposals and such. And then if they're not adhering straight to that outline, then I can address that with the student. But I think that's something that's going to be important to move forward. We do need to embrace the technology, but maybe we need to think about altering our assignments and how we assess the learning that students are doing.
Yeah, thank you, Tracy. I think that's such a great comment. And I'm also seeing a lot of comments in the chat box, and then there's a Q&A thing I can open. And I appreciate the comments. A lot of people are saying, I'm not the AI police, that kind of thing. And so it's such a tricky balance at this point. Thank you for that comment.
Thank you, everyone, for your participation. Thank you to Joanna and Craig and George for your presentations, and for all of those of you who participated and added your comments to it. It is, as we've indicated at the beginning, an area that that's continuing to develop, and one that we need to continue to investigate, explore. I would just add, along the lines of several of the comments, that one thing that we know from research is that the way we message bad news to students is really critical to their success. And so whatever we do with AI and dealing with it with students, we need to find positive ways, not to say, oh, so glad you used AI to produce this essay, but find ways to message our concerns to them in a way that they don't come away feeling as though they don't come away feeling shamed by the conversation. And I do think, to the point that several of you made, having a conversation with students about it rather than sending them an email to say, it looks like you used generative AI to write this essay, is a better way to approach it, because the evidence is simply not conclusive at this point in the tools that we have available to us. So as we wrap this up, I appreciate the comments that have come out of this. Certainly we need to take a look at how do we manage this going forward? How do we manage the workload? Appreciate your feedback on that, Joanna, and others who spoke into that, because that is something that is a takeaway for me from our session together here today. Thank you to all of those of you who are here at LAPU who joined in, as well as those of you who have come from other institutions. We appreciate your time, and we will be hosting another webinar on another human-centered design topic in 2 months' time. So talk to you all later. Have a great day.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thank you.